Video games have expanded into many different categories over the last 2-3 decades, creating a market that can include every single person, no matter the background or interests. As back in the day, you would only really see platformers, side-scrollers, and some RPGs sprinkled in, but in the big 2025, we have everything, and we've had that for a while now. Like cute, fun little anime girls with magical powers and cosmetics, and a system built to grind for hours with embedded gambling, and a lot of underage individuals. Actually, you can never tell if they're 12 years old or like 10,000 years old. That's just something you have to unfortunately bite the bullet on with these type of games. But yes, gacha games by its pure definition is a game that provides some sort of randomized loot box, but with some pay to win or pay to progress factor, meaning it isn't just cosmetics that you're gambling for, but you can win something OP that can help you proceed through the game a lot faster. And this is why games like CSGO, Team Fortress 2, Overwatch, and many others aren't considered gacha games, because if it's not pay to win, then it can't really include the gacha title. So today we'll be trying to subliminally demonize gacha games for their gambling embedded marketing, especially towards little kids, the developers focusing on gaining money rather than making the game better, and the innate repetitive behaviors that come with mostly all gacha games. But first we have to go all the way back to mid-60s Japan, where the first gachapon machine started to hit restaurants, stores, and markets, where you could basically insert a coin and a random toy or figurine would pop up resembling a vending machine. And the difference between this and a vending machine is that the vending machine will give you what you asked for, and the gachapon device will randomly select an item for you, so if you don't get the figure you want, you'd have to spend more money and try again. The name comes from the audio that emits, gacha for the sound produced when turning the crank, and pon for the sound it makes when the capsule drops. These became a hit in Japan and eventually were exported to Europe and United States to further popularize the industry, but you didn't click on this video to learn about gachapon machines, so let's get to the meat of it. Pause. The shift came about in the late 90s, where the digital era was booming, having consoles like the PS1, Dreamcast, and Nintendo 64 that had gamers hooked. And in 1999, NTT Docomo released the iMode, a basic feature phone that popularized the mobile network genre by including a web browser on the phone to search things on the internet and even access games and install apps, sort of like phones we have today. The iMode was extremely popular in Japan, and Docomo did try other markets, but it wasn't nearly as successful as it was in the great Japanese nation. And many different video game media companies started to hop on the train, making content for the new innovative phone. Companies like Bandai and Namco, yes, they were two different companies before they merged, I think in like 2005. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But fast forward a couple years later and we would see the first emergence of gacha mechanics on mobile feature phones with services like Gree, which is a platform that lets you play games. These social gaming networks would introduce the faint subtleties that we see in current day gacha games right into these mobile games, introducing mechanics like virtual currency, which you could obtain by playing the game or by paying real money, and with this currency you could get things like randomized rewards in the form of items, characters, and cards. Technically, the first hint of a gacha mechanic that is most widely known is MapleStory, which was released in 2003 on PC, which some of you have probably played or still play, as it's still an extremely popular online role-playing game, generating hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And MapleStory did start using a gachapon system in 2010, where you could use real money for these virtual vending machines to randomly get magical items, weapons, armor, and consumables. But what is widely regarded as the pioneer of gacha games is no other than Dragon Collection, that came out in 2010, developed by Konami on the Gree platform. Dragon Collection was the first true gacha game, as players could collect these monster cards through a randomized system, which could be used in battles against other people, basically becoming a pay to win. And millions of players fell in love with the free-to-play collection model, and since then gacha games have been slowly rising, adapting prominent themes like anime aesthetics, cute girls, and some sort of role-playing action. This very smart plan to make games free-to-play to hook players and then grab their wallets with microtransactions has been a thing that the gacha genre integrated with their games from the beginning. Many people believe games like Fortnite were the pioneers of the free-to-play attraction, but it really started with these small mobile social networking games that got the ball rolling. And real mainstream success started to flourish in 2012 after the release of Puzzle and Dragons by Gung Ho Online Entertainment. They really loved to use dragons in their titles back then, I don't know why. And these games were on iOS and Android, making it extremely successful globally, just in the first 2 years generating billions of dollars in revenue, massively popularizing the game into Western markets. And this game really introduced things like limited time banners, creating special offers that would only last a short time to create an urgency for an item so you can impulsively spend money. Mechanics like the stamina system, where you could only play for a certain amount of time before having to wait real actual time, unless you paid for it, of course, with real money, because you know, money solves everything. And adding a pity mechanic that makes you feel better after spending your monthly allowance, giving you something good after a set amount of failed pools. And it kept getting bigger, as later on in 2014 it would get games like Grand Blue Fantasy, and in 2015 Fate Grand Order, that would completely change the landscape to an anime aesthetic. But these games were more driven on storytelling and visuals, as opposed to the predominant social networking and loot pulling aspect of its earlier predecessors. The gacha mechanic was becoming a little more disguised now. And as the anime trend for these games started to kick in, so did other fans of the anime genre, making gacha games even more popular now. I could talk about other gacha games that came out in the next couple of years after this one, but to keep it short, we'll go with the most well-known gacha game of all time, and the poster child, Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact is an action 3D role-playing game that really elevated the gacha game theme by introducing a vast world with an appealing story, somewhat interesting characters, and an RPG style being able to level up and grind. This game came out on all platforms and really took the gacha game industry to a whole other level, as it's free to play and has some form of gambling, which the kids love nowadays, apparently. And that's the problem with most gacha games in general. Mostly it targets kids to spend money on the game by giving them hope for a cool skin or character and promoting special deals for a limited time offer to give them a sense of FOMO or the fear of missing out. And I don't really blame gacha games for using FOMO techniques on their player bases. Every company loves doing this to generate money. How many times have you bought a Fortnite skin because you don't want to wait another 3 months in order to buy it again? But in Fortnite, when you spend money, at least you get whatever you paid for. Rather than Genshin, you might get the item you paid for, or rather gambled for. And the biggest concern on social media with gacha games isn't just the gambling front, but a more important issue that can become a catalyst for many younger people, which is addiction. These games are designed to be extremely addictive for undeveloped children, and it's fun if it's some game like Minecraft or Call of Duty, but when a game's core premise is to get random loot boxes for an advantage, then that becomes a serious issue. Especially when in order to have a chance to spin these loot boxes, you have to grind a substantial amount in the game, or what tends to happen most of the time, you spend real, actual money. And I know kids have no money. When I was 10 years old, I probably had like $12 to my name, but kids have parents, and parents have credit cards, so you know where I'm going with this. And there have been countless stories of kids spending tons of money with their parents' credit cards, very similar to the Roblox stories you hear of kids buying Robux with their parents' real money. An example of this is a guy by the name of Ling Xing Meng who found himself in credit card debt due to his daughter spending $20,000 on Genshin Impact. If this had happened to me, I'd probably disown her. But thankfully he was reimbursed the whole $20,000, and the daughter should be even more happy because I would have made her pay the whole 20 bands by the time she turns like 25. Give her debt straight out of high school, I don't care. You spent $20,000 by stealing my credit card, that's like, you're dead to me, bro, at that point. Another story from this father's 22-year-old son with cerebral palsy, epilepsy, autism, learning difficulties, and the cognitive ability of a 7-year-old child who spent, hold up, they really went crazy on this kid, who spent $3,160 on hidden artifacts, which is another gacha game. And the father thought that the game was safe for his son, as the game was rated PEGI 3, meaning suitable for ages 3 and up, but didn't think of the spending that could be done. And I feel like a lot of parents are so unaware of what their kids can do, even if they are cognitively a 7-year-old. Now any kid can steal your credit card and buy whatever they want on a game without any remorse. And that's why it's very wishy-washy with stories involving kids stealing their parents' money, because on one end of the argument I can see how gacha games can predatorily target kids with adopting gambling and spending habits. But at the same time, I blame parents for letting their kids play these games without ever doing enough research into what these games actually are, and it's a whole persona that these games put on. Gacha games disguise themselves as a fun, cute, wouldn't hurt a fly type of game, making parents believe it is fine for their child to play, feeling like they don't need to do their research because the game seems childish and friendly-ish enough. But they are far from that, and although statistics for gacha spending with underage kids don't really exist at the moment, as that is something that's really hard to track and obviously you can lie about it, but this minor form of gambling by spending small amounts of money over an extended period of time is perfect for getting kids hooked. You might hate to admit it, but gambling is thrilling and exciting regardless of the age. And general statistics even back up that kids aren't really saints. According to GHA or the gambling held Allowance, 15% of gamers have taken money from their parents without permission when they were younger. And countries like China are realizing the spending problems on kids and young adults with these kind of addicting gacha games, so they've restricted and made it illegal for some of these mechanics to be in place. In December of 2023, China proposed new regulations to prevent obsessive gaming behavior and make it illegal for games to add things like regular login rewards for first-time purchases, and minors wouldn't be allowed to play luck draw features. Now, of course, this is technically illegal, the same way it is illegal to jaywalk on the street, but this is a step in the right direction and will surely help unnecessary spending. And actually, China has cracked down on addiction with video games towards children and would make a strict restriction on kids under the age of 18 only being able to play an hour of gaming a day. Which again, kids don't listen to, and I'm not really sure I agree with this. I think it's a lot better if parents come in and monitor their kids' playing time instead of the law swooping in. But either way, besides the minors being affected, you can clearly see the industry for gacha games is skyrocketing as money is pouring in from many different titles. Like here we see the revenue of the most popular mobile games in the month of January 2025, and it's a very long list with very big numbers. Gacha games like Genshin Impact, which received 99 million in the month of January alone, as well as Honkai Star Rail receiving 50 million, Fate Grand Order with 34 million, and Love in Deep Space, which I think is a romance game, but there's also fighting. I don't really know, it's like some Bonnie and Clyde shit, but that also has raised 55 million in January, and the month before that it's raised 90 million. And a lot more of this list are gacha games receiving money, so it's a humongous market of people overspending, impulsively gambling on the chance to win something good. There's something off about the predatory nature of gacha games that bring the worst out of people with spending problems. Some people like to gamble but realize it's idiotic, so they find themselves gambling on much smaller things, but at the end of the day it's a snowball effect and they will end up spending a lot more than they initially planned. But I also blame the dumbasses that spend too much for their own good, and I know it'd be the same adults that worry about rent, food, car insurance, and yet spend a fourth of their paycheck on a gacha game, which is just incredible. Anyways, that'll be it for this video. I know there are some gacha games out there that are actually good it, and this did sound like a gacha game hate video, and it kind of was, but there are some genuine gacha games that are interactive and a fun experience for players who want to indulge themselves in it. But the over-promotion of limited time loot boxes to have a chance to win something good is what I believe to be an unethical flaw, but at the same time, no one is forcing people to spend their money on gambling, so I'm interested to know what you guys have to say. Let me know if any of you guys have played gacha games. Do you think they're predatory towards children, or do you think they're safe? What do you guys think? And if you watched the whole video, I greatly appreciate it. I would also appreciate a subscription. It only takes like 2 or 3 seconds. You just have to, you know, exit out the video. If you're on the phone, just tap on the rectangle shit, and then there's the subscribe button, Kentoji. I would greatly appreciate that as well. And drink water, and don't ever start your morning with cereal. That's really bad. Bye.